What if I told you that a man born over 500 years ago could explain everything about today's political chaos? From backroom deals to viral tweets, from global wars to culture wars, he saw it all coming. His name? Niccolò Machiavelli. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a king. He was something far more dangerous, an observer of human nature. And his cold, strategic mind laid out the rules of power in his book, The Prince, a political survival guide written in 1513 that's still being followed today. By whom? Presidents, dictators, CEOs, even influencers. Because whether you're running a country or running a YouTube channel, the rules of control don't really change, only the tools do. So ask yourself this. What would Machiavelli say about Donald Trump, about Vladimir Putin, about the smiling faces you see on TV promising you change, justice, peace? Would he see them as heroes or manipulators? Would he admire them or expose them? In this video, we dive deep into what Machiavelli might say if he were alive today. Not from the lens of fantasy, but through his own brutal logic. And by the end, you may not look at modern politics or your own life the same way again. Niccolò Machiavelli was born in Florence, Italy in 1469, a time of political instability, war, betrayal, and shifting alliances. He wasn't born into royalty. He wasn't a powerful warrior. He was a political advisor, diplomat, and writer, someone who sat in the back rooms of government and watched how real power operated. And what he saw shocked him. He realized that the leaders who succeeded weren't the most moral or the most loved. They were the ones who understood how people really think, how fear works, how appearances deceive, and how power is gained, held, and expanded, even if it means breaking the rules. In 1513, after being thrown out of politics and even tortured by his own country, Machiavelli wrote The Prince. It was his revenge. A book that told the truth about politics, not how it should be, but how it actually is. It was a brutally honest manual for rulers, one that said, in essence, if you want to win, forget idealism. Be strategic, be feared, lie if you must, be a lion when needed, and a fox when necessary. Now think about today, the chaos of modern politics. Leaders rise and fall overnight. Narratives are shaped by algorithms. Charisma matters more than policy. Loyalty is temporary. Public opinion flips in a tweet. In such a world, Machiavelli's ideas are not outdated. They're alive. They've evolved. In this video, we imagine Machiavelli living in our time, scrolling through Twitter, watching news debates, analyzing leaders, and we ask, what would he think? What would he say? And most importantly, what would he warn us about? Let's step into his mind, and through it try to understand our world a little more clearly. Before we dive into what Machiavelli might say about modern politics, we need to understand what made his philosophy so unique and so controversial. At the heart of Machiavelli's thinking was a simple but unsettling idea. People are not as good as they pretend to be. Most political theories of his time, and even today, were built on morality, religion, justice, or virtue. But Machiavelli threw all of that aside. He wasn't interested in what should be. He was interested in what is. And what he saw was this. Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, deceivers. As long as you benefit them, they are yours. But when danger approaches, they turn on you. According to Machiavelli, a good leader is not someone who is virtuous, but someone who understands human weakness and uses it to control outcomes. That means using fear when necessary, lying when needed, creating appearances of goodness while hiding ambition. To him, politics was not about morality, it was about power. He also believed that humans have short memories. We forget betrayal. We forgive lies if they're delivered with charm. We crave hope, even if it's false. And that makes us easy to manipulate, especially by those who understand these flaws. He was the first to say it so openly. Power is a game, and if you want to win, don't play by the rules. play by results. That's why The Prince has been read not just by philosophers but by emperors, politicians, CEOs, revolutionaries, and even criminals. Now imagine giving Machiavelli a seat in today's world, watching global elections, seeing leaders campaign on emotion instead of logic, observing media spin, social media outrage, and loyalty based on identity over truth. How would he react? He wouldn't be surprised. In fact, he'd say, "I told you this would happen. Nothing has changed. Only the mask has improved." Let's now explore the 4 core principles from The Prince and examine how they're playing out in modern politics. Core number 1. It is better to be feared than loved. One of Machiavelli's most famous and misunderstood quotes comes from chapter 17 of The Prince. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Let's break that down, not just historically but in the context of today's political leaders. What Machiavelli observed was this: love is voluntary, and people can stop loving you the moment you stop giving them what they want. But fear? Fear is reliable. It's rooted in survival. People obey those they fear, even if they don't like them. To Machiavelli, love makes you vulnerable. Fear gives you control. Now let's jump forward 500 years. Think about leaders like Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, or even corporate leaders like Jeff Bezos during Amazon's rise. They didn't rely on being loved by their people or employees. Their image was built on dominance, certainty, control, and in some cases, intimidation. Fear kept opposition in check. Fear discouraged rebellion. And Machiavelli would argue, this makes them more secure in power. But this isn't just about authoritarianism. Even democratic leaders use this principle, subtly. Fear of an external enemy, fear of collapse, fear of the other side taking over. These are used in campaigns and speeches to consolidate power. Political ads often don't say, "Here's why you should love me." They say, "Here's why you should fear them." Think about post-9/11 America. Fear of terrorism gave birth to extreme surveillance laws and global wars. Many people didn't like it, but they accepted it. Why? Because leaders sold fear as a necessity. And as Machiavelli would say, the ends justify the means. Even in workplaces or relationships, this idea plays out. We often comply with people not because we like them, but because we don't want to face the consequences of crossing them. Machiavelli didn't say you must be cruel. He said you must appear strong enough that people think twice before betraying you. And he warned, avoid being hated. Fear is useful. Hatred is dangerous. A feared leader can maintain control. A hated one invites rebellion. In today's hyper-connected world, fear spreads faster than ever, through headlines, tweets, videos, and memes. And those who can generate fear without becoming villains are often the ones who rise highest. Machiavelli would look at today's leaders and say, many of them learned my lesson, even if they never read my book. Core number 2, the appearance of virtue is more important than actual virtue. In chapter 18 of The Prince, Machiavelli writes something that sounds almost evil, but to him, it was simply reality. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. To Machiavelli, image was more powerful than truth. A leader didn't need to be honest, kind, or noble. They only needed to look like they were. Because the public doesn't see the private decisions. They don't read secret memos or hear what happens behind closed doors. They see the photo ops, the speeches, the carefully crafted smiles. So if you could create the illusion of virtue, honesty, generosity, empathy, you didn't need to actually possess those qualities. You just had to act like you did. Now fast forward to 2025. What do most leaders, political or corporate, invest in? PR teams, speechwriters, branding experts, Instagram strategies. Why? Because perception is power. Looking good is often more useful than doing good. Because voters, followers, and customers base their decisions on what they can see. Take modern politicians who speak passionately about justice, equality, or patriotism. and then accept money from corporations or pass contradictory laws. Are they virtuous? Machiavelli wouldn't care. He'd ask, do they still win elections? Do people still cheer for them? And more importantly, do people believe them? Machiavelli would say that many modern leaders have mastered his rule without even knowing it. Think of how social media lets politicians and influencers curate their image. You can tweet about saving the planet while flying private jets. You can post about kindness while treating staff terribly. You can talk about truth while twisting facts, and people will still support you if the packaging is strong. This principle goes beyond politics. Celebrities, influencers, even ordinary people craft personal brands. We post happy photos during sad times. We filter our faces. We smile on camera while falling apart off screen. Machiavelli would say, well done. You've learned how power works. But there's a dark side. When image becomes more important than integrity, society becomes hollow. We vote based on charisma, not competence. We follow leaders because they make us feel good, not because they lead well. Machiavelli didn't think this was good. He thought it was real. And if you want to survive in such a world, you must learn to see through the mask. Because as he warned, a prince must be a great pretender and dissembler, and today the best pretenders don't wear crowns. They wear microphones, makeup, and social media smiles. Core number 3. Loyalty is a tool, not a guarantee. Machiavelli had no illusions about loyalty. In his view, loyalty wasn't something permanent. It was a transaction, a temporary agreement based on self-interest. And once that interest disappears, so does the loyalty. He writes in The Prince, "The friendship which is bought with money and not with greatness and nobility of mind is paid for, but it does not last." In other words, people are loyal as long as it benefits them, financially, emotionally, socially, or politically. Once that benefit is gone, they move on, or worse, they turn against you. Now, let's apply this to the modern political landscape. How often do we see political allies suddenly become enemies? Advisors who once defended a leader later expose them in books or interviews. Parties that once supported a candidate now distance themselves when the public mood shifts. Even nations switch sides, not because of betrayal, but because interest changed. Take an example from U.S. politics. Former cabinet members under presidents often end up criticizing those same presidents after leaving office. Why? Because the protection or influence they once enjoyed is gone. So they shift positions to protect their own image or to gain relevance elsewhere. To Machiavelli, this isn't hypocrisy. It's just human nature. People follow strength, success, and rewards, not sentiment. If you're winning, you're surrounded by loyalty. If you're losing, you're alone. That's why Machiavelli advises rulers to be cautious about trust, not paranoid, but aware. He warns, princes who rely entirely on the loyalty of others, especially soldiers, are doomed. In modern terms, this applies beyond just armies. Today, loyal soldiers are your media teams, political allies, corporate donors, and public supporters. But the moment your power weakens or a scandal erupts, those same allies will vanish, unless you've created a system where their survival depends on your success. This is why some leaders maintain control not just with charisma, but with systems of dependence, contracts, favors, secrets, or leverage. It's not about friendship. It's about mutual survival. Even in workplaces, this rule applies. Ever seen a manager fall from grace, and the same people who praise them now gossip behind their back? Loyalty at work is often tied to position, not personality. Machiavelli's point wasn't to make you cynical, it was to make you strategic. Understand loyalty for what it is. A tool, not a guarantee. And if you lead with the awareness that today's cheers could become tomorrow's silence. Because in his world, and in ours, loyalty isn't owned, it's rented. Core number 4. Control the narrative before your enemies do. Machiavelli lived in a time when power was physical. Swords, armies, assassins. But even then, he understood something many leaders still overlook today. Power also lives in perception, and whoever shapes the story, shapes the truth. In The Prince, Machiavelli warns leaders to manage their reputation as carefully as they manage their army. Because once people believe a certain narrative about you, whether it's strength, weakness, cruelty, or kindness, it becomes almost impossible to change it. He writes, "A prince must guard himself from being despised and hated, and when he does this, he will have done enough." Now think about that in 2025. What's more powerful than a sword? A viral tweet, a trending hashtag, a 15-second clip out of context. One news cycle can define a politician's entire career, or destroy it. And Machiavelli would say, that's why you must get ahead of the story before someone else writes it for you. Modern politicians do this instinctively. They hold press conferences before scandals break. They frame losses as strategic moves. They brand betrayals as tough decisions. When something goes wrong, they flood the media with counter-stories, distractions, and spin, because they know if you control the narrative, you control perception, and perception is power. This isn't limited to politics. CEOs release statements before earnings reports. Influencers apologize before cancel culture strikes. Public figures rebrand themselves constantly, from villain to victim, from weak to wise. All of this is narrative warfare. Machiavelli would admire this. He'd say, you don't have to stop the truth. You just have to speak louder than it. But there's a second part to this. Never let your enemies define you. If your rivals paint you as cruel, beat them to it. Own it strategically, or redirect it. If they paint you as weak, stage a display of strength. Because once the crowd believes a version of you, even the facts can't fully erase it. This is why Machiavelli believed in preemptive image management. Don't wait for an attack. Shape your image constantly, intentionally, ruthlessly. In today's world, this means curating your digital footprint, anticipating criticism, and always having a counter-message ready. Machiavelli wouldn't have hated Twitter. He would have weaponized it. He'd say, in politics, truth is not what happened. It's what people believe happened. Control that, and you control everything. Real-world tie-in. Machiavellian tactics in today's headlines. Let's move from theory to reality. Because Machiavelli's ideas aren't just historical curiosities, they're alive. Every day we see his tactics being used in politics, media, and business. Sometimes openly, sometimes in disguise. Take Donald Trump, for example. Whether you support or oppose him, one thing is undeniable. His rise wasn't based on traditional political virtue. It was based on perception, dominance, and narrative control. He turned press coverage, and even negative, into fuel. He framed himself as the outsider, the fighter, the victim of the deep state. That wasn't accidental. It was narrative warfare. Machiavelli would have smiled and said, that's how you win power in a divided republic. Now look at Vladimir Putin. He projects strength ruthlessly, even brutally. He jails opponents, controls media, and maintains an image of fear-based stability. He uses nationalism, fear, and historical pride as tools to justify authoritarian moves. Again, this is straight out of The Prince. It is better to be feared. Even Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, though widely admired in the West, demonstrates Machiavellian strategy. A former comedian turned wartime leader, he quickly transformed his image from entertainer to global symbol of resistance. How? Narrative mastery. He spoke directly to the world. He wore olive green shirts. He posted videos from war zones. Machiavelli's ghost would nod in approval. Control the story, and you control the battlefield. These leaders are just a few examples, but the tactics go deeper, even into corporate boardrooms and digital platforms. Consider Elon Musk. Controversial, unpredictable, often criticized, yet always in control of the narrative. He announces tech breakthroughs before they happen. He jokes, trolls, or distracts critics with memes and bold promises. He keeps his followers loyal not through traditional leadership, but through a cultivated persona of brilliance, rebellion, and vision. He knows that loyalty, once built, becomes armor, even when mistakes happen. On a more subtle level, politicians worldwide use Machiavellian techniques without ever reading his work. Campaign slogans that inspire fear. They're taking your freedom. Carefully timed leaks. Image rehab stories before elections. These are not coincidences. They are strategic calculations. Machiavelli wouldn't condemn any of this. He'd say, "This is exactly how rulers must behave to survive. Morality is a luxury. Survival is a necessity." Even the idea of cancel culture reflects his thinking. A public figure falls, not always because of wrongdoing, but because they failed to manage their image or control the narrative. They let others define them. And once the crowd turns, it's almost impossible to recover. That's why Machiavelli emphasized this above all. A wise ruler must not only act, but appear to act with purpose and strength. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Whether it's a tyrant silencing dissent, a CEO rebranding failure, or an influencer spinning scandal into sympathy, Machiavellian tactics are everywhere. And often, they work. This doesn't mean you have to like them. But if you want to understand power and survive in a world where perception often matters more than reality, you need to recognize them. Because once you see the game, you can no longer be manipulated by it. And that's exactly what Machiavelli wanted. Not to corrupt you, but to wake you up. What does this mean for you? Now the big question, so what? Why should any of this, Machiavelli, strategy, fear, narrative, loyalty, matter to you? Here's the answer. Because you're already living in it. Whether you're a college student building a personal brand, a startup founder trying to attract customers, a content creator trying to grow an audience, or just someone navigating jobs, relationships, and society, Machiavelli's ideas are no longer just for rulers. They're for anyone playing the game of power, which, like it or not, includes you. You might not be leading a nation, but you're leading your life. And in the digital age, that means managing how others see you. Employers check your profiles. Clients Google your name. Friends follow your every post. Your image is shaping your opportunities, just like a prince's reputation shaped his kingdom. So what can you take from Machiavelli? Understand perception. How people see you matters, sometimes more than what's true. You don't have to be fake, but you do have to be intentional. Protect your energy. Don't expect undying loyalty. Know who's with you for the ride, and who's with you for the reward. Be aware, not bitter. Anticipate conflict. Not everyone wants you to win. Instead of avoiding that, plan for it. Be calm. Be strategic. Be 10 moves ahead. Tell your own story. If you don't control your narrative, someone else will. Be bold about who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going. Be useful, not just liked. People respect those who bring value, solve problems, and stay solid under pressure. Being liked is nice, being needed is powerful. And maybe most importantly, stop waiting for the world to be fair. Machiavelli didn't write a guide for a perfect world. He wrote a guide for a real world, messy, brutal, political. A world where the good guys don't always win. A world where being kind isn't enough if you don't know how to protect yourself. If you want to do good in this world, you must first learn how it works. Because only then can you play the game without losing your soul. Machiavelli wasn't trying to make people cruel. He was trying to make them aware. So ask yourself, are you leading your own life or reacting to others? Are you controlling your image or letting it form by accident? Are you moving with strategy or just emotion? You don't need to become a manipulator. You just need to stop being manipulated. And that's the real power Machiavelli was talking about. So now that you've seen the world through Machiavelli's eyes, what will you do with it? You can dismiss him as cynical, or you can recognize the uncomfortable truth. Power is not about purity. It's about awareness, timing, and control. In a world of attention wars, social media spin, and constant competition, Machiavelli's lessons aren't just for kings anymore. They're for creators, entrepreneurs, leaders, you. So here's your challenge. Start thinking like a strategist. Don't just create, curate. Don't just speak, influence. Don't just react, predict. Ask yourself before every major move, what story am I telling the world? What would Machiavelli do in my position? How can I act with both purpose and perception? You don't need to be cold-hearted. You need to be clear-headed. Because power doesn't go to the loudest or the nicest. It goes to the person who understands the rules and rewrites them. If this video made you think, even just for a second, then don't let it stop here. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment. Which Machiavellian idea resonated with you the most? And share this with someone who needs to stop being naive and start being powerful. Until then, stay sharp, stay strategic, and remember, the world may not be fair, but you can still win. This is your move. Make it count.